This week on the Bub Report, we shine a critical spotlight on the fourth estate in Grenada, the media. We ask the tough questions about the state of independence or lack thereof in journalism and reporting, the undue political economy influence in media houses by political parties, the fragmentation of media workers based on political party affiliation, the emergence of social media as a challenge to good journalism, and the future of media in an environment where external forces have undue economic and social influence. Reporters Without Borders ranks Grenada as being 44th out of 180 countries in the 2020 World Press Freedom Index.
There has been serious dialogue as to what media is free to do. Most times we hear media tongue is tied, the freedom of the press. We have been put on the back burner. We are not really a free press in terms of what we can and cannot do. So I strongly believe that if we get that opportunity to get that particular document and put something in place, it would mean well and better for the operations of media persons in Grenada.
We are also joined today by Titus Joseph, proprietor of TJ's fast food restaurant at the Market Square in the town of St. George, to discuss small business entrepreneurs' concerns in the wake of government's decision to relocate them to the National Stadium. This relocation, according to government, is meant to facilitate renovations at the historic public square, but vendors are up in arms over the lack of communication that preceded this move.
I don't understand. Since the COVID go, Grenada is COVID free. What is the reason? Yesterday they announced that Grenada open free, but today they say the market not opening. For what reason, we don't know.
The media panel assembled for today's discussion includes Raw Titus, Beverly Sinclair, Lincoln Depredine, Callistra Farrier, and Michael Bascom. This is Sunday, July 12th, 2020, and welcome to another edition of the Bub Report. Thanks for joining us. A pleasant good morning to everyone, and welcome to yet another edition. I am Kellon Bub, and I am happy that you can join us this morning. Of course, since the untimely passing of my former colleague George Grant a few months ago, I've made a commitment to hosting a media panel to discuss the state of media in Grenada. In fact, the Bub Report hopes to make a contribution towards improving the quality of journalism that Grenadians are clamoring for. There seem to be two competing schools of thought with respect to journalism and the performance of the local media. The first school of thought is that media are muzzled and won't freely and courageously report on compelling stories out of fear of reprisals from what Callistra Farrier terms the political machine on the island. The other competing narrative is that media are too incompetent, which shows up in the quality of work that is published. On the recent Fort Judy incident, Oliver Benoit, writing in the Now Grenada publication, wrote the following, quote, "As I listened to some of the discussions on the local media, I became convinced that the United States 24-hour TV news channels are having a devastating effect on the population of Grenada, the inability to contextualize events as they unfold in other societies," unquote. But before we get to our media panel this morning, I want to welcome Titus Joseph, a son of River Road and also the proprietor of TJ's fast food restaurant out there in the Market Square. Titus, good morning. I think Titus's video is frozen. Titus, you would have to log out and log back in. But one of the reasons we wanted to bring Titus in is to discuss the situation at the St. George's Market Square. Of course, this week, the vendors were, and there we have Titus. Titus, I think we can see you now. Good morning. Titus, hello. Yeah, we seem to be having some problems with his connection there. But yeah, so this week there were some issues with vendors and lack of communication or thereof. And so a lot of the vendors actually held a protest action. I'm trying to get Titus's connection here, but we seem to be having some connectivity issues. Titus, can you hear me? Titus, are you there? Let's see. Nope. We're still having some.
Hey, the audio seems to be a little off.
Okay. All right, go on. But I can hear you. So Titus, tell us. Tell me, Titus. What prompted the protest in the market square this week? Yeah. So we're still having some audio problems there. But I want to get to some of the comments that folks have been making about the opening monologue. Michelle Alexander is saying that media professionals are influenced by party politics. So we have that. Good morning to Leo Lenny Edwards. He's saying that he's looking forward to this conversation. Grenada Sunshine says, a pleasant good morning to Kellen, panelists and viewers. Special hello to Senator Sincere. I believe, Senator Sincere, you're joining us as well on the stream. Thank you for joining us this morning. Sue Patrice as well, saying I share. We have Naisha is saying happy Sunday. So what we're going to do, folks, we're actually going to take an early break to resolve this particular technical issue that we're having. And we will be right back.
And there are some of us in the media who understand and know what we have to do. But there are others who may not necessarily be doing what they ought to be doing at this particular time. Is there anything that gives your government the authority to mandate to all media houses, be it television, be it radio, and of course newspaper, to do what they ought to do at this time?
You know, I have consistently, Andre, you've heard me over the years talk about the irresponsible nature of some persons involved in what I consider so-called press, because to me they don't represent. When I talk about press persons, I talk about someone who is bring news based on facts, and who doesn't have an axe to grind, but simply brings information, and who likes it, who doesn't like it, but the facts speaks for itself. But when one twists every issue against an individual or group of persons, I think you've reduced yourself to a non-person in the media, because you are propagandists, you are someone with an agenda, and to me you're not effective. And when you bring news that is slanted against a group or individuals all the time, then you lose credibility, because it is clear that you are not bringing news, you are just trying to hurt an individual or group. And to me, that's not a media house. I mean, I hope and pray we've gone back to the days we could have more of the Alistair Hugheses and Leslie Pear.
All right, let me welcome our media panel. Our issues with Titus have not been resolved technically, so we are going to definitely connect with him later. Maybe later we would do an interview and upload it on our page. But I want to welcome Lincoln Toro Depredine, and Raw Titus. Joining us in a little bit would be Beverly Sinclair, and we also have Callistra Farrier should be joining us. Actually, on cue, I have Mr. Bascom. Mr. Bascom, good morning.
Good morning to you, Kellon. Good morning to Toro, Roll.
Yes, I've decided to assemble that great panel here this morning. But Raul, you just heard what the Prime Minister said, and preceding Andre Donald's comment. What did Andre get wrong in that clip?
Oh, wow. At the start of the question, I was kind of inclined to think it was a good question.
I never
But at the
asked a good
conclusion,
question.
no. At the start of Andre's question.
At the start of Andre's question, I see.
Yeah, at the start of it, I was starting to think that it was a good question.
Right.
Him started. There was some, but then at the end of the question, I would wonder, well, where was he headed? But we know where Andre was headed. You see, let me put something into context before we launch off on a platform of this discussion, and it has to be understood this way. The reason why the media is in the state it's in today, right? And a lot of what is happening is a manifestation of the problem in terms of the level of coverage and the competence of individuals and fairness and all that sort of thing, right? That's one thing. But the fundamental reason why we have a chaos and a dilapidated state of the media architecture in Grenada is because over the years, governance, political governance, whether it's NDC or NNP, have issued a plethora of license to individuals, sometimes for political reasons and different reasons. So we have a superfluous amount of media houses in the country which we do not need. So the business model is wrong. For 100,000 population, you don't need. So what has happened? The effect of that, they have diluted the media industry in Grenada. It has been significantly diluted. So if years ago, $5 million was the advertising budget and everybody's competing for 2 media houses, now about 15 or 20 media houses competing for maybe a little more than $5 million now. So you find that you and I and Toro and Harold Paisady and Richard Simon and professional people who made it a career have to move on because you cannot stay in a diluted sector. You've had Flow, you have GBN reducing the roles, the functional roles of certain media function. For example, the program director, T.C. Campbell, the legendary T.C. Campbell must have been the last best known program director. GBN has reduced the status of a program director function. They have reduced the status of a news director function. Flow have reduced the status of program when they were around. So you see functions and positions have been reduced. The media has been diluted, and then it's a wishy-washy situation where anybody comes off the street and be a journalist. And there are some people who are trying. I can call names in terms of get the fundamentals right and coverage. So what you find in a diluted structure where the media system in Grenada is so weak that the politicians can run things and call shots and control because the structure is so weak that professionals have moved out, and those that are coming in now are not coming into a platform of strength, this media structure of strength. So this is what is happening. The same politicians, the same political organizations and government that are complaining now, they are the same ones that created the environment that they're exploiting. So this is a fundamental problem with the media in Grenada. So you find you cannot have individuals making it a full-time career where they can report independently and be comfortable that the media entity will back them. Let me stop here.
Bascom, was it always like this with respect to the question of independence? Because I remember working in my days, working with the Grenadian Voice newspaper. Leslie Pear was a fiercely independent journalist, right? And he didn't necessarily toe a line per se. So how did we get here?
Well, some of what Raul said, and then in addition to that, I think it had to do also with the the personal responsibility of those involved. Probably yourself, Raul, even Toro, when they were deeply involved in the media, they had that personal responsibility. So even if there are things that they believe being done wrong, there is also the responsibility to get it right, And as you indicated, there was the likes of the Leslie Pierre and others. And I just want to add, Roll, there was also Troy Garvey as a program director, even after TC, So there were those who were there to guide us along, even Lou Smith, for example, in terms of broadcasting, in terms of news, and so forth. And there were those who were the recipients, who were receptive to those things. So I think, in addition to what Raul is saying, which I think it's part of the problem, but not the problem, there's also the personal responsibilities of the individuals in the various situations. Whether you're a news reporter, whether you're a broadcaster, there is that personal responsibility of getting things right. So I think it's
But Bascom, how can you reference personal responsibility when a lot of media houses operate in an environment where they depend on what Callistra calls the machine, the political machine, to to earn a living, or to earn their daily keep? I mean, personal responsibility under those circumstances can be very challenging. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I agree with that. But then it takes the might of the individual. I mean, you personally, Kellen Bob, probably would have been considered a no-nonsense person. Callistra in her own right is a no-nonsense person. And we can identify different various persons who are involved in the media that we consider no-nonsense person. Yes, there are those who will probably wither under the pressure of politics, and then there are other factors as regards to the low wages and all these sort of things that obviously we can deal with another time. But yes, I agree with you. There, with the pressure of politics, there can those who can wither under that pressure.
Toro, I'm going to bring you in. You've been involved in Grenadian media for a very long time. How long have you been involved in media in Grenada?
Too long that I want to remember.
Too long. Be specific, please.
About 40 years. Yeah.
40 years. Right.
Yeah.
Now, would you agree that there's always been an issue of freedom of the press in Grenada? Starting back, I believe you got involved in the revolution, right?
Right. Of course. I mean, in every environment, there is politics, right? And you can't get away from it. There's politics impacting the media in the United States where you are based. And in a way, every journalist has to determine in some way the amount of risk they want to take in terms of doing their job, right? So every politician will try to influence the media. They want to get the message across, right? But I just want to, everything that Bascom and Titus has said is true. But I think we should expand on this issue about press freedom and the ability to do your job in the environment, because it's more than just the politician. We could always monitor the politician, but to me, a bigger issue to press freedom and the way media do their job is the private sector. There are many stories which go unreported in every community, including Grenada, because media depend on advertising. And in Grenada, for example, there are very few media houses, private sector groups that advertise. And those that advertise, in my view, barely advertise. What they may do one with advertising, or they may sponsor on air personality. And from henceforth, what they send press releases out to you. Some of them tell you that you run it as it is, or they tell the newspaper on which page they want to run it. So to me, it's not simply a matter of government, but we also look at the private sector. In fact, they have lawyers, for example.
I'm sorry, Toro, but it can also be both, right? I mean, it can be government and
it could be both.
And so if we're having a discussion about the fourth estate, right?
So not
and having a
government. I know lawyers, for example, who may call media house and say, if you report on so and so, you'll get a lawsuit. So you have various players who try to intimidate the media. So I'm saying government is part of it, but the discussion has to be broadened to include private sector and other players in the environment. So it's an issue that has to be dealt with, and there need to be improvement, not just with reporters, but the management. In my day, I always had supervisors. So, for example, I see a lot of things happening in media, and I always ask myself, Where are the supervisors? Either Lou Smith, either Leslie Pierre, Dick Henderson, Jules Elder, who's from Tobago. So it's not simply the reporters, but where are the supervisors? Where are the management? There needs to be improvement in these areas for us to get anywhere in terms of media in Grenada.
Raul, what say you?
Yes, I was saying Toro a bit low. Toro might need to boost its volume on the mic, but I grabbed the essence of what Toro is saying, and also Michael, thanks for that correction. Yes, with Toro now, that's though I agree with those points largely, although from a slightly different perspective as well. Um, the private sector is playing the field and reigning now because policy has given them that context to do so. Policy, political governance has weakened the hand of the media. And so as a result of that, what has happened now is that private sector can do what they want because the media is now a weaker because of the in a strange way, in an interesting way, weaker by virtue of numerical strength, weaker in terms of quality. So you find as a if we had standards where you had the media market, we say two, we agree that we need two radio stations or two newspapers or one television station, and we build a structure. This is the structure we operate in. We know that that strengthens the hand of the media, right? And so the commercial entity, the private sector, cannot really divide and conquer like that because the media has a stronger, can play a stronger hand. And I think this is what we need to look at. I believe in the freedom of the press, we all do, but you cannot have a liberalized structure. And some of the governments in Grenada have a policy of liberalization. You cannot liberalize, everything cannot be a liberalization model. Some sectors have to be protected. The Nutmeg and Cocoa Association now, they agree, a lot of the farmers agree for merger. But what do you think is one of the burning issues? They don't want competition. Some sectors have to be protected. The electricity industry cannot be liberalized. You must have it protected in the big USA. It is not really liberalized. The regions have monopoly, and this is how it operates. So some in post-revolution and post-invasion Grenada, we cannot have a free market concept for every sector of our development. Some have to be protected, and then you have to open up the market for some. And in the media's case, we came with a liberalized approach where we just hand out with ulterior motive. We weaken the hand of the media and gives the private sector free rein, and even the politicians free rein to run in and monopolize. And yes, I agree, there have individual good success stories. A lot of people have tried, they have pushed in terms of reporters to improve themselves and do good reporting. But I'm afraid that because of that context that we have created, we have weakened the hand of the media, and that is showing up itself in the performance of the Grenadian media and its relationship to politics and its relationship to the private sector and other things that work against it.
Lydia James is saying most of them are reporters and not journalists. I think that's an interchangeable term. You can be a reporter and a journalist. Margaret Francis is saying, Toro, as the editor, you dictate what happens in your newsroom. News releases have to be written or else it just doesn't go. Yeah. Chevron Benjamin is saying, Margaret Francis, answer to your question, as a job, I think this is the comment I was looking for. It's not that it can be both, it's both. Government threatens to pull license and squeeze the owners. This is Chevron Benjamin Francis, who actually worked as a journalist in Grenada. Says government threatens to pull license and squeeze the owners with taxes. Private sector use their finances as meat hanging over a pack of hungry dogs to control. That is a very profound comment. How do we respond to that comment? Bascom and Raw.
Well, Siobhan knows exactly. Siobhan knows exactly. Not to hog the mic, but just a quick intervention here. Siobhan knows exactly what she's talking about, and I agree with her 100% because I know what she's talking about. I know what the issue is, and it's correct. They have used this, license and so on. The thing about it is, quickly, we were pushing for changes through the Media Association, Bascom, myself, and a lot of others, and so on. But then What happened? We had the consultation, and that consultation started years ago under the Mitchell administration. We came up through the years and so on. Maybe I don't need to call politics here, just deal with the issues. We had discussion, we had consultation, and we got to the point where, and to George Grant, may soul rest in peace, he played a major role in that. So we got to the point where the document was ready, and it went to the Ministry of Legal Affairs, and then Legal Affairs had to go to Parliament now. What happened? Politicians dropped the ball and left it in the queue.
Well, I think Siobhan basically put in just a few words what Toro is really explaining, you know. So I fully agree with what she said, and someone who has been involved and probably is fully familiar with the issues. I think that is what really happened. Toro would have put it nicely and in more words, and probably
He put it very diplomatically in a way that Leslie or George Grant would not have been able to put it. But I suppose anyhow, I would. You're not as brave. I wonder why you're not as brave, Toro. Is there a reason why you're not as brave as Siobhan is, Toro? But
woman power.
I see. All right. Let me welcome Beverly Sinclair. Beverly Sinclair has been involved in Grenadian media as well. Beverly, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Kellon. Good morning to your panel. Good morning to your listeners and viewers everywhere.
So, Beverly, we were having a discussion around the sense of independence or lack thereof in the media. In offline discussions I've had with you, you've actually expressed frustration at that lack of independence. Some might say that lack of independence comes down to wanting to have to toe the line for economic survival. How do we get out of that rut to ensure that media can actually be professional and do its work independently and fearlessly?
Getting out of that rut, very interesting. The way out of it starts at the individual level, I would say. If a journalist is not prepared to do his or her work as it should be done, then there is no getting out of the rut. History tells us that change usually begins at the bottom, not at the top. So the people who want to maintain the status quo are not going to call up the journalists and say to them, hey, you should be doing more investigative journalism. You should be reporting on the hard issues. Ask the hard questions. The people who want to maintain the status quo, government interests, business interests, people who own the media houses' interests, they're not going to say that. It is the journalists who have to find that backbone and find that stamina. And if you do not have a passion for journalism, I guarantee you, Kellon, that you will not find any journalists fighting for the truth, fighting to tell a story if they don't have that passion. The overarching interest of having food to eat, being able to pay your bills, all of those will take precedence. And you'll always have people backing off and saying, oh, leave it alone. It's not worth my salary. Let's just let that go. So getting out of the rut is going to first begin with having journalists who are passionate about what they do.
Is that missing in Grenada currently?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you just listen to stories that make up the news and you know that there's no passion, because what comes out is just a regurgitation of what people in officialdom say. There is no backstory. And the backstory is where the passion comes in. And I am well aware of the constraints that journalists work with in Grenada. Media newsrooms are not properly staffed, they're not properly financed, and all the rest of it. Those are there. But they cannot be excuses for a journalist getting out there and sinking their teeth into a story and say, I'm going to get to the bottom of it. But what happens, they do not get the support, neither from the media house to which they're employed, nor from their peers. I have seen and heard journalists who want to do some kind of deeper work than just on the surface, and they go into news conferences and they ask certain questions and their peers beat up on them. Why are you asking that? You know, this is not necessary. This is not what we're talking about in this news, in this press conference. You hear that coming from their peers. So they're ostracized. They become a pariah, you know, and that seems to be the norm in the media in Grenada. Take a different angle, take a different approach, and your peers beat upon you. And certainly those who want to keep the story covered, they're going to beat upon you as well. So that is why we are in the rut, because the journalists are not passionate. There's no passion. You must have that fire burning inside of you, Kellen, and that is where it has to start.
Bascom, I mean, when I worked, I had the pleasure of working with both yourself and Raul. When we attended press conferences, as a unit. It's quite surprising to hear Beverly say that journalists are actually chastised for asking certain questions. I mean, that is surprising to me. That we have gone down that road.
We have come to that, and we have come to that, you know, and it's glad that Beverly actually added to what I was saying in terms of the personal responsibility that at least, you know, and I'm thinking that the caliber of the journalists themselves, we cannot just look at just the politicians and just, you know, what pressure the politicians pay upon the journalists, but the journalists have that responsibility as well. But yes, Kellon, and it has become increasingly like that you hear stories that you know, journalists feel a bit coward into going into press conferences, into asking questions, into being chastised, into being labeled. I mean, yes, in our time, there were, you know, there were scenarios where journalists may have been accused of, you know, taking a side or whatever. But
I've been called NDC, NNP. I've been called the worst names in the book.
That was the norm, and as far as you're concerned, you know, in some cases it's a motivational factor, it's inspirational. At least you're doing your job. But yes, very, very concerned and surprised to an extent that we have reached that that far and at that level in terms of you know, the whole media landscape in Grenada. But adding to what Beverly said, and just going back to what Roland said too, it's also a scenario where there's a lack of leadership in terms of the media association, a strong media association, I should say, where it's acted as an advocacy. When last you have heard a media association coming out in support of journalists, coming out in support of issues affecting journalists? We haven't had that, or we haven't seen that in probably the last year or 2 years. It's very sad.
Raul, I believe you were actually the president of the media association, were you not?
Yes, for two terms. After Ray Roberts, I think it was. And yes, now to Beverly's point, which I agree with mostly. But the problem here is the attractiveness of the profession. It is no longer an attractive profession, and I use those words very cautiously here. Attractive in the sense that one, you cannot make a career out of it. Two, the benefits are null and void. I mean, the benefits are sparse. And three, you risk. You compromise yourself. You compromise your family. You make great sacrifices. People hide in the background, sources hide in the background, and even today it's happening, and use journalists. They want to use journalists to light their flames and to push their argument. They don't want to come out and establish themselves as sources, so they hide and they tell you something, and they play journalists against the system and the government, and a lot of that happens. I agree that the journalist has to. Have to develop himself and make efforts to develop himself and follow the fundamentals and so on and independence. But you see, there's a culture. Journalism is a culture of behavior, is a culture of ethics, it's a culture of context, conduct. It's a culture that puts you in a position that shapes you and makes you, it puts you in a position to report independently, to report fair, to challenge. And yes, there is an antagonistic relationship between the government and the media. Whatever government is in power, there's nothing wrong with that. Let me just say government alone. Whatever power structure that exists, whether it's the government or the private sector, there has to be an antagonistic relationship naturally between that journalist and the, if the journalist is playing along and running press releases as is and taking orders as is from private sector and politicians and so on, you can't really have that. Press releases belong somewhere else. Real journalism is real journalism, where you get different side of the stories and where you get the facts and where you investigate. So that comes from a culture. And I'm sorry, but that culture of profession that we had years ago, coming out after the Whips era, from the Whips era of the Lou Smith and all these guys who
Jerry Romaine
and so on. That culture has been smashed by the politicians in government sending out licenses, having a plethora of media houses, weakening the structure of the media. The platform of the profession has been weakened. So it has been weakened and it's on its knees. It's on its knees. And so we are in a situation where you cannot really, the new ones coming in cannot really report independently. Plus, we have a media association where they're timid. You need to reprimand the government if you think that press freedom is an issue. You cannot. You have to be advocate. You have the media association is a biased body, and when I say bias to the profession, to protecting the profession. That's what I mean.
But would you also say that they're currently a biased body with respect to who they affiliate with?
Yes, you see, you
politically.
have to, right, but they have to.
I'm not going to be diplomatic about that.
Right. So if whoever is in power compromises press freedom, it is the onus is on the media house to advocate, whether it's through speeches, whether it's through press conference, whether it's through statement. You must advocate to reprimand and remind whoever the powers that be that, hey, this is the media. We are part of the demographic architecture, and we are part of the check and balances. You have to remind them because we signed up for democracy, didn't we? We gave up revolution, didn't we? In post-invasion, we signed up for democracy. So you have to let the media play its role, and you have to respect the media for playing its role. So so what you find that you have a media association that's politically compromised. You have media professionals who are, and yes, I call them professionals, who are compromised politically, and there are some who understands the culture that we're in now, so they tread cautiously. And yes, to Bev's point, we have a culture where media colleagues have been criticizing media colleagues for asking the tough question. You have a situation where a prominent politician raises an issue, in the and journalists say, you have raised this issue, okay, so because you have raised this issue, now clarify it for us, which is valid. Nothing wrong with that. You're a public figure voted in by people, so it means now that you have to account. There's a lack of accountability across the board. Even with the issue with the police force, there's no accountability, and that's another matter I wouldn't touch. But the point is, you have to let the media, you have to fix the culture and the climate in which the media operate, so we can recoup the strength. So you're coming from an independent platform, and people are trained and you're backed up by media advocacy. So you have the vigilance as part of that estate where you can question and challenge and report and investigate without fear of being discriminated against or any form of backlash.
Siobhan Benjamin Francis says, Bev, you're answering too diplomatic. There is no getting out of the rut as long as you have government officials calling managers and demanding reporters be fired. I actually had that personal experience when I worked with Community Channel 6 as well, after publishing an investigative report on oil and gas in Grenada. But I digress. She says, private sector officials demanding apologies and threatening to pull ads because you covered a story of their competition. Imagine reporters chastising their own due to politics. Then we have an association that doesn't even stand up for its members. It's literally non-existent. Right now, it's a case of every man saving his, and we can complete that.
And then you have a media house, a top media house in Grenada, that's preventing people from reporting on a strike in the same media house. So the people are striking because
Are
they
you,
have
All you can say it, it's GBN.
and you have the and trying to sue journalists who is reporting on the issue. And you are a journalist, you're trained as a journalist. What's going on?
Beverly, do you hear that passion coming from Raul?
Yes, I do hear the passion coming from Raul. And, when I came into the media in Grenada, Raul was one of the persons very active in the media at that time. And there was always that antagonism that he spoke of. But it is the antagonism which leads to a journalist establishing his or her independence. I have certainly been thrown stones from all sides. I don't care. I don't really care. I've had politicians calling my boss in Community Channel 6 as well, you see. And in one particular episode, I can remember, I told off the politician, and when he called the boss and the boss called me, I tell off the boss too. Because as far as I'm concerned, all they can do is fire me. That is all they can do. And my subsistence does not hang in a little job that anyone offers me. I'm sorry, it doesn't hang there. And if you put your worth, your self-worth there, then you will always set yourself up to be used and abused by the powers that be around you. The only thing you can do is fire me. And guess what? I'm going to live, because what is inside of me belongs to me. It does not depend on you. So you want to get upset because of something that I said or did, which is true and factual, but which you want to remain hidden, that is your problem. But Kellon, we do not have a lot of journalists who will take that stand. They will not, because they're afraid of being ostracized. They're afraid of not getting calls to the cocktail parties. I actually saw a journalist post something to the effect that, oh, so-and-so is upset with me now. I guess I won't be invited to any more cocktail parties. Yes, and I am like, really? So that is important to you as a media person? It comes back to self-worth and the value you put on the work that you do and who you are as a person. So I understand what Siobhan is saying, about the media managers being called up and being put into certain position. I understand that perfectly, but it does not take away from the individual responsibility of journalists. Grenada is a small country, and if the media houses here know that they are only going to get people of a certain standing to work in their newsrooms, that is where the culture begins to change. That is how you push for a change in the culture. Advertisers would understand that we advertise in your news because it's controversial. We advertise in your programs because they are controversial. And controversy attracts viewers, attracts comment, it draws people there. So if my product is there, I get the visibility that I want. It is not that I support any point of view as an advertiser. I am putting my product where the publicity is. Advertisers don't get that. Advertisers, for the most part, think they have to like a program and they have to like this and like that before they put their ad in it. But people who understand marketing and understand business know that you put your product where the publicity is. But we have not yet matured to that level, neither as advertisers nor as media managers in this country of Grenada. We're not there yet. Everything is still a friend, who like who report favorably for who, and all the rest of it. That is where we still are. And that is why it is difficult for young people who have not been trained in journalism, who do not understand the profession. You just hire someone who is looking for a job and send them out there to go and report. And whatever some person in authority, not necessarily political authority, but what some person in authority, in a position of authority says, the journalist goes back and report that, oh, he said this, she said that, and that is supposed to be news. That is not news. That is not news. There are important announcements that are made in the sphere of leadership and authority that need to be reported, yes. But you always, as a journalist, you have to get behind the story. You have to get the information out there to people so that your work as a journalist can be seen. But we have a lot of armchair journalists today. They sit down, they don't want to go out on the road. Nobody wants to ask questions. Everybody wait on a news release. That is where the passion is missing. The nose for news is missing. And we come to depend on whatever the authorities say to make up a newscast. I had the really earth-shattering experience recently of hearing a reporter ask in a press conference, about one of the incidents, and we'll probably get to those a little later in covering the big stories, but I have to stick it in here. When I hear a journalist ask a police officer who was not on a scene to give the facts about a situation, a reporter asking, oh, so, we've heard this narrative about this situation that happened, blah, 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 whatever. But I'm asking you now, what are the facts concerning this? And I was thrown back as if someone hit me. I said, but that police officer was not on the scene. The people who have been talking were on the scene. So even if you want another side of the story, or if you want to hear the official position of the police on it, you ask for it. But how can you be asking a police officer who was not there to be giving you facts when the people who were there have already said what they believe are the facts and have already given their side of the story? So is it a case where you are saying that you do not believe these people who were there? You don't believe what they said. They have been talking, Mr. Police Officer. So now you give me the facts. I was shocked to hear a reporter asking a question like that.
All right, Beverly, thank you. We would stick a pin. We would take a break, folks. We would have headlines. And then I was able to pull up some archival footage from 1982, I believe, or 1981, where members of the People's Revolutionary Government were actually threatening the Torchlight newspaper back then for reporting on the incarceration of members of the Rastafarian community. I thought that was interesting because it would appear that media intimidation is not necessarily new in the annals of Grenadian history. So, folks, we will be right back.
Out of overseas newspapers where they were talking about how we cut down forests and we have missiles aimed at other islands, where they were talking about Russian naval bases in Carriacou. Even that kind of destructive criticism we are willing to put up with because we felt the revolution was strong enough. But the one thing we can put up with from nobody is when they move to a stage to actively begin to incite violence, to actively begin to make counter-revolution. And that is why, following the Rastas article on the Wednesday Torchlight, we had to move on the Torchlight right away. They're even inviting the Rastas to go out and demonstrate for their rights. Can you imagine that? Torchlight newspaper.
And welcome back, folks. Raul, how do you respond to that clipping that you just saw?
Well, it just emphasized that we have a history in Grenada of many things on different fronts. We have a history of media abuse um, um, uh, that dates back. So it goes back a long way. We have a history of police abuse that goes back. We have the Mongoose gang, which was abuse. We had abuse in PRG time, where they were putting people in jail for no reason. And then we having abuse now where the police doesn't want to account, where there's no accountability for the police behavior. Police is abusing their privilege on a social front, on a legal front in terms of the law on various fronts. But then I want to make this point. We had an opportunity to fix this, So do I blame the people or do I blame the politician? Let me explain.
Rol, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you, but there's also some blame to persons like yourself. As Alpha Foray suggested, if I can find her comment,
Right.
she said, I was just planning to sit this discussion out and listen. However, I have to call it my friend Rol Titus on this one. Shouldn't he take some blame for what is happening in the media in Grenada today? You were part of the leadership structure of the Media Workers Association, yourself, Bascom, and others. So we also have to shine a light on what personal responsibility we take,
right?
Which is our lack of leadership.
Right. So she's correct. She's correct. We have to take some blame because we were in leadership position. Yes, we did some good things. We pushed for policy. We pushed for training. We got UN funding through the UNESCO. We sent journalists to train overseas. We wrote up projects to have training in Grenada. We pushed for advocacy. We kept them. So we did a lot of good things. But yes, if that is a blame that we have to take because we didn't do enough, we could have done more. I take that blame. We take that blame. So yes, on that front. But I just want to make a quick point here in terms of the tracking, in terms of the problems we don't solve that keeps reoccurring. The accountability issue with the police. We had a referendum. And we had Bill 6. We had an opportunity written by Francis Alexis, I think it was for Bill 6, to fix the issue with the police in terms of holding police to account. What we did, we voted against all the good things in the referendum that we should have supported. We voted against it. So I could say, okay, let me blame the public. Well, the public has to take some blame, but the politicians have to take some blame. You know why? They should have united more on the referendum issues. They were good referendum issues. The revamping of the parliamentary election office. I don't see any Grenadian who should disagree with that. For years, Carriacou wanted the name on the passport cover. Sugar Patch, the first known Carriacou Calypsonian sing years ago, put your name on the passport cover. Carriacou did not come and rally together and champion this and so that the constitution could have been changed so the name could be on the passport cover. So yes, Grenadians have to take blame because there were some good things in the referendum to bring about accountability in the police force, freedom of speech and all of that. But they let the politicians divide them, and the politicians have to take the ultimate blame because they didn't come together and say, listen, we go into the population. Let us unite on these issues. They are good issues. Carriacou, and so on. So let's unite and put it to the people so that we get enough vote to change the constitution and so on. So that they have to take blame for that.
All right. Bascom, we are almost out of time. We were not even able to get to the big stories because we were actually having a very rich discussion. But I'm going to bring in the entire panel. Toro, and I will start with you. Where do we go from here?
Right. I just have a few things to say quickly, right?
Yes.
That the issue we have with the media is that I agree with a lot of things that Beverly has said. But in going forward, and again, the Media Association, I'm not sure what people want the Media Association to do. The Media Association doesn't have any sanctioning power. I know we could issue statements and we have paper tiger and stuff like that. But beyond that, I'm not sure what the Media Workers Association could do because journalists who are working with media are accountable to the media owners, to the managers, right? The second thing is we could get a Freedom of Information Act. I agree, we need that. But unless we get trained or trainable people coming into the media, we get some of the brighter people coming into the media because we have a lot of bright kids graduating every year. Real bright, I'm telling you, real bright. And media may be down on the list. They're going to all kinds of different professions, whether it's law, medicine, or whatever. So we need several things. We need trained and trainable people to come into the media. Media has to become more attractive in terms of the salary, right? The salaries. And we also have to be very careful in terms of there are genuine criticism of the media, but we also have to be honest. There are a lot of people who criticize the media because they believe the media is not reporting to their likeness and image or whatever agenda they have. There's lots of that. It happens here in Grenada. It happens in the United States. Some people just don't like CNN. They call it fake news. Not that CNN is doing anything wrong. And that happens. So there is a consumer also. We can't leave out of the picture.
All right, Toro, your footage is breaking up. Thank you. Roll, I will get to you, and then Bascom and Beverly. Where do we go from here?
Okay, so we have to try to fix it as best we can. First of all, we have to look at what we have now. We don't have a media policy. I know the government has said they want to back away from it. They don't want to be involved in it, but they have to be part of the process. And so what you find is that you have to work towards having a media policy with the inputs in place to protect the sector, the input for regarding training, the business model, all of that. It has to be, you have to put features there to make it attractive and to make it independent so that you can bring a career. And that may mean that some media houses may have to merge. I mean, we have a situation where the financial sector in Grenada, they had to merge. Different organizations had to merge because they had to make changes. The media industry in Grenada has to change, but it has to change with policy, at the level of policy, at the level of political governance policy, at the level of a media policy. You have to put structures in place. It has to rise out from that context where you put the features in place that dictate and stipulate training, that dictate and stipulate standard, and so on, a complaints commission and all of that sort of thing. So you must, and you have to get the players involved, the media managers, the media owners. You have to get them involved as part of that process. That is the first step that we have to make, so we can see results down the road, because it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to come together. We did some work already at the media policy level. We did some work already. George Grant did some work. May so rest in peace. We all did some work. What has to happen now? You have to take up what we did now and move forward with it. Other people make their contribution, and you have to bring it into Parliament and pass. The administration has to be committed towards a media policy. Bring it into the Parliament of the country so that the media policy have features that impact positively at the institutional level and at the individual level.
Bascom?
Be brief, because obviously Toro and Rawl and obviously Bevel will bring a wrap to it, that the media, I would say, is, I agree, no longer attractive. And it's so because for many, the media is no longer a career, but is seen as a job for many, unfortunately. And unless we get the media to be treated as a career, we'll find that we still recycling and having the same problems. I recall as president of MWAG, we used to have what we call a career fair. You know, we go to various schools, even to the T.A. Marshall Community College and other secondary schools, and explain to the students about the media and the media as a career, and again, not as a job, because for some they thought that the media was all about, in fact, in radio in particular, was all about DJing, and unless they get an idea of what the media entails, the various roles within the media, they will just consider it, when I get out from school, in order to make some money, I can join the media and flip-flop. Many years ago also, the media was actually consulted, and probably up to a few years ago, consulted on many issues in society. We had media practitioners who actually sat on various bodies as stakeholders, and because it was considered an important arm of society, we no longer see that again because of the respect of the media. And finally, and it goes back to all that we have been saying, that those involved in the media need to rethink their role in the profession, and probably look at the personal responsibility, with all that we have been saying in terms of the various stakeholders, including the government, including the business sectors, all of that. The personal responsibility, that is important. If you do not see yourself of worth, then probably you don't need to be in the media profession.
Beverly.
That's right. Yes, well,
Final comments.
Raul mentioned something about the Constitution, and I have to say, Raul and Bascom, that I am part of a caucus on Constitution, Education, and Reform here in Grenada. It's a citizens movement, has nothing to do with government. We just started a radio program on GBN's radio station Wednesday evenings, 6 o'clock. And our aim is to open up the Constitution and help people to see what's in it and why we need to make some changes, because Constitution reform is definitely needed. The two referenda which were held in Grenada turned out to be complete disasters because they turned out to be political activism instead of a change in the Constitution. So that program has started. We're talking about the way forward, and I believe the Constitution as a foundation has a key role to play in making those changes within the Constitution that can arm the citizens to make the changes that are necessary on the ground. The Media Association, Toro says what it can do. I watch media associations around the region. In Jamaica recently, when they tried to stop media workers from taking photographs of people accused of serious crimes, it is the Media Workers Association who got together and say, you can't stop us from doing that. For years, we have been taking photographs of people who are charged with these serious crimes. And there is no way we are going to allow you to come and institute some law to stop us from doing that. So it is the Media Workers, the Press Association of Jamaica, which stood up like giants and advocated so that the government in Jamaica could not institute that law to stop them from taking pictures of people accused and publishing. So the Media Workers Association does have a role to play. But if it is weak as it is now, it can't play that role. So going forward, the attractiveness of the media, that needs to be worked on as well from several areas. Training, remuneration, those two are necessary. So that is how we're going to have to move forward. Not going to happen overnight. We need the policy. And I saw Margaret's comment, the media workers have to put the policy together, but it still has to go through the parliament to be passed into law. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be sanctioned or endorsed by government, but we need our elected parliamentarians. That's what we elect them to do, to represent us. So if we, the people, say this is the law we want, it is their responsibility to go into the parliament and make sure that law is enacted. And we have to advocate. If they don't agree with things in it, they will push back. We have to advocate and stand up and say why we want it this way and it has to be done this way. We are the bosses, we are the employers. They need to carry out our requests, but we have to advocate for it, because over the years we have given up our rights, given it over to them. We got to take it back.
All right, Beverly, thank you so much.
I never said that the media doesn't have a role. The media association does have a role, but we as media workers also have to stop playing political football with the Media Workers Association. All lawyers have political persuasion. Doctors have. Even an icon like Alistair Hughes, he was an executive member of the GNP party. So I don't see why we keep tossing around what are the political affiliation of media workers. We have to look at whether they're doing the job effectively.
Well, Toro, that is a good point. But are they doing their job with those political blinders on? Is the question we should be asking, not whether or not they have a political affiliation.
Who is judging? Those who are judging whether they have political blinders. Are they themselves? Do they have political blinders?
I mean, we all have biases, don't we? But when we are doing the job that we're supposed to be doing impartially and fearlessly, it should be done within the context of the ethics of journalism. Right? So I don't mean to cut you, but thanks for the clarification. Panel, thank you so much. Regrettably, we had some issues with connecting with Brother Titus Joseph today, but we will definitely attempt to connect with him and perhaps other members of the Market Vendors Association there in the town of St. George. Thank you so much, viewers. Join us here every Sunday for a discussion on current affairs issues on the Bub Report. It has been my pleasure for another Sunday. Have a wonderful Sunday and a great week ahead. Bye-bye.